Welcome back to Building Today. We're going to look at a second meeting with a client. We've had our initial meeting, we've done some hand sketches, figured out approximate size and shape of the house. We received a survey from the surveyor with contours of the landscape so we know how the house will fit in the site. So this meeting is going to be to review the preliminary designs that we produced based on those initial hand sketches and the survey and the limited amount of information the client gave us via email as they were collecting things that they liked. So there's going to be a lot of stuff that's going to be changed, I imagine. There's going to be a lot of things that we'll discuss during the meeting that will come about as the client has changes to the designs, because as you'll see through this process, you change one thing, you usually have to change 10 other things. So part of this meeting is going to be figuring out the best ways to meet the client's needs and to implement the changes that they want to make in a positive way that affects the house overall.
The client was unsure of whether or not he wanted to renovate the existing structure or whether it would be more cost-effective to completely tear down and start from scratch. And we concluded that based off of what he wanted a kind of a age-in-place situation, and the existing residence was not only deteriorating like structurally a bit, it was also had, a step down here, a couple steps down there, and it would have been too difficult, too expensive to get that house to the place where it would have been something that he would have, I guess, enjoyed living in. This meeting now that we're having with the client today, we'll discuss, some of the finer details, exactly how much space he wants in, say, a master bathroom compared to master walk-in closet. Like which spaces will give and which spaces will take to really kind of fine-tune how he's going to live in this space.
So that meeting went really well. We made quite a few changes. I would say overall pretty minor changes. It's a fairly straightforward house, cottage if you will, on the lake. The client ended up, as you saw, we bumped the house out 4 feet because the original parameters for size that he gave us just wasn't quite enough for everything he wanted to put into the home. We did our best with the first pass, but there were just certain spaces he wanted to be a little bit more spacious. It went just to plan. We didn't start from scratch, so that's always a positive. He's real pleased with how the house fit into the site. We have a few things to amend there. We initially met with the client to create a remodel plan, and then as we were going through the house, it was actually the client that realized, because he's familiar with construction, that by the end of what he told us he wanted to do to the house, it wasn't really financially worth it to save any of the house. Pretty much replacing all the windows, all the insulation, the roof, new bigger windows, and leveling the floor, which was raising the floor. Foundation was shot, so we would have had to lift the house, put a new foundation, and yeah, by the end of it, it was like, this doesn't make any sense. We're just gonna tear it down and build new. We ended up doing an initial pencil sketch, and from that, we generate what we see here, which is a preliminary design. We emailed this to the client, and so for today's meeting, we've already made some of the adjustments that the client wants to make. Principally, the main level is going to grow by 4 feet. The entryway was a little bit tight at the initial concept, and this Mudroom area here was getting a little bit tight. So it was nice to add about 4 feet to the length of the house. We may even make this mudroom a little bit bigger because the entryway is quite wide. We had a fireplace in here. The client originally instructed us to put it on this wall, which was a little less than ideal because that wall looks out at the lake here. And we really didn't want to block that view. So this is the old version of the drawing with the fireplace in there. There's your view. So it was a little less than ideal, and we talked about it at the initial meeting, but until you really see it for what it is, it's really hard to know what it's going to be like. And we removed that fireplace, put in a nice big window, and now we have a great view of the lake through this space. As we always do, there's always a conversation of, how big do the windows get? It's always kind of juggling, what cost is and what client's personal preferences for natural light is. This is where we settled at the end of the meeting. Nice wide window. We talked about a much wider door here, but at the end of the day, he was really happy with this, so totally fair. We're gonna make a few changes to the kitchen. There's no dining room. To those of you that are well familiar with floor plans and observant, you'll notice there's no dining room in this house. Client didn't want one. His lifestyle is to eat at the island, and when he has family or friends over, they eat at the island or out at the deck and enjoy the outdoors. A couple of larger changes that we made. We're going to mess quite extensively with the site. There's a well that we need to watch out for, an existing well that we want to maintain. We talked a little bit about view, and just what the client's used to seeing from the old house and which direction they want to look on the lake. So we're actually going to rotate the house on the site a little bit to be parallel with the property line. That affects cut and fill of the site, but not in huge ways on this project. Another change that we made at the preliminary design meeting here was to the roof. Going into this meeting, we had done a hip roof, which the client liked and thought that was the only thing he could do. And then I explained, well, we can do any kind of roof you want on this house. So we started playing around with flat roofs and some gable roofs like this, and he really liked this. So we're gonna go with a totally different roof structure on top of the exact same footprint of house. And there's not going to be a stitch of white on here for the second preliminary designs, which again is totally fine. We weren't really sure what the client's preference was for colors going into the initial meeting, but that's why we have these meetings, so we can get through all the client parameters. And it's going to be a really nice house. We're actually going to end up going with kind of a sage green, kind of a dark green for the siding. We're going to add some stone, black trim, black windows. It's going to have a little bit of a contemporary feel to it, but overall just kind of the classic cottage on the lake. So next time we will be looking at the pricing drawings. We'll be doing selections, so stay tuned for that.